Namaste. Welcome to Unthink Me. States of consciousness in the integral model, one of the 5 deals. And James and I are going to be talking about kind of preliminary entry level awakening states, things that kind of legitimize, like when you experience them, you're like, okay, maybe there's something to this, spirituality or consciousness transcending thing. That's kind of where we're at today. This stuff goes way, way deeper. It's a life practice. It goes to infinity and beyond. We're in the gateway right now. We're talking about gross into psychic states, possibly into subtle, and just stuff that happens spontaneously. Some of these do just happen, and we're going to talk about why they happen in James's episode, due to like spontaneous stuff and the buildup of pressure. In my presentation, this one, we're going to talk a little bit more about like deliberately inducing it, trying to make it happen, that process. And both are huge, very common, typical gateway kind of experiences. You have to say that this is classically well known to be impossible to talk about. The language does us no good. It's translinguistic. So everything we say is bullshit. Understood. Like states of consciousness.
I never said I was right.
We're not right. States of consciousness are ineffable, but the whole point of integral is we're making them effable a little bit, as much as you can. Can we talk about this stuff at all? Can we create a vocabulary and language so that we can at least understand like where we're at, where we're going, what it means on some level, at the level of ego? These are, this doesn't, this advances the dialogue in ego, in culture. This doesn't get you into states, talking about states.
My hope of hopes for these episodes are you're sitting there maybe listening or watching and you go, hey, that's it. If you do that, mission accomplished.
Maybe you've had states, maybe you remember, maybe you don't, maybe you're trying to have states. This is for everyone. And we're just trying to kind of characterize what starts to feel like that sort of transcendent angle.
Maybe, a peek into the third tier from an amateur's view.
And yeah, leaving the confines of your flesh on a metaphorical level, being able to see other people as you see yourself, see the world as you see yourself, kind of seeing the seeing of your selfiness of all the things, and the way that like we can characterize that with myth and story and rationalization. That's what we're up to. We're just getting into states here. I actually just completed my own map of all 5 modules of the integral model. Here it is on the screen, I'm imagining, when I edit that in. So including quadrants, levels, lines, types, states, aquila latus. And in our show, as in all integral presentations, you're going to see a lot of levels and a lot of quadrants, because those are the things that integral really pumps in. Now, lines and types, that's more conventional. Integral doesn't mess with that, other than to say, like, this exists. This is the thing. Yeah,
hey, there they are.
This is what modern psychology has to offer us. So that's good. Let's keep that. And then states is sort of in a middle ground. Like, definitely modern psychology deals with states a lot, but not in the same way as integral. Integral is really focused on the idea of these transcendental states and how spiritual practice may or may not result in them, why they happen, what they are, what it means. Are they real? Are they true? Is it Lucifer deceiving you? What is the deal with these people meditating or just randomly sitting on a park bench and all of a sudden becoming one with the universe? All of a sudden, everything that isn't me is God and I'm in love with it. What is that? What's that all about? Because I didn't know that growing up, that it existed. And then I started to discover it little by little and start having states of consciousness, comparing them with your complete, there's no system of understanding this in our culture. So I found this integral map thing and finding out that the experiences I'm having are extremely consistent with this map, and they match the territory of what I'm experiencing, matches the map that Ken Wilber is presenting me with better than pretty much anything else I ever found. So that got me stuck. You look to religious traditions, but those to me are very outdated, like literary, like amber meme approaches. They're like covering the stuff correctly. And as you start doing the state stuff, you start sort of reevaluating, like, why does religion exist all throughout history and today? What are people getting out of this? What is the meaning of this?
Okay.
Integral will often say, you know, despite what they're doing politically and despite what they're doing ideologically and all that, at the core, it seems like what we get out of religion and what we are trying to get out of religion is these states, is transcending the human story and finding a higher, deeper, wider sense of identity in this mental world that we're constructing. As I conceptualized it, you know, maybe entering college, like late teens, I started actually doing the things that you're supposed to do to provoke these experiences, which prior to that had just kind of come spontaneously, surprisingly, whatever. And so it kind of started with yoga. So I still do yoga to this day. Bodily awareness.
How much influence did Street Fighter have on your yoga? Did you
Just the
think there
fire
was going to
technique.
be Yoga Flame? Exactly. Exactly. Sorry.
Mainly, I just like have a skull necklace. That's the main part
Hmm.
of yoga that I embrace, and lots of fire involved. No, I'm a water elemental, so Dulcim is useless to me.
Oh,
Ken Wilber characterizes the sort of green to teal to turquoise personality, kind of the way you see yourself, as centauric. It's as like a body mind, both at
mhm.
once, not like body over here, mind over here, dealing with these in different domains, but starting to see the bleed over and the overlap here. So yoga is a really great entry point into these states. The way I tend to access states is starts with body awareness. It starts with recognizing constrictions in my face, physically, in my body, all the muscles I'm pinching myself into being, I'm pinching my ego into existence, reacting to the pressure against me. The entry into states is just not doing that anymore. It's just, I'm not constricting, I'm not pushing back against the pressure. Here I am afloat on the water of existence. I think that's the entry
There
point.
we are once again with tolerance and acceptance,
Yeah, absolutely.
rearing its beautiful little head again. Would you say that yoga helped you because it's like a physical trigger into meditation? Like your mind is like, oh, we're doing that thing again.
My inferior Myers-Briggs type is that
Mm.
present moment extroverted sensing. That's the thing I'm least good at. So I think by tackling that opposite of me, it's really effective for me.
Hmm.
Different practices for different people, but I was a very not body aware person. Very, very bad posture, no body awareness. Yoga is all about just pay attention to that. Pay attention to
Hmm.
how you stand, how you sit, how you react to things, how your muscles clench up. And I mean, to start with, just, you know, you're following your breath, you're being your breath, and you're just feeling the sensations and you're breathing air into your sensations as you do that. So that's, you know, hatha yoga, that's basic yoga,
Hmm.
body, mind, both at once, bringing awareness to body. The point of yoga originally was it was sort of a set of preliminary training practices to get you into meditation. Yoga
Hmm.
is like the long-term path of yoga is the same as the meditative path, but
Yeah,
it
that's what I was
starts,
asking.
yeah.
Is so that's friggin' nailed it. It's a physical trigger to meditation. Yeah.
And the way I talk about states is very often visual. Translating the visual content doesn't convey the state. But I'm a very visual person, so I describe them very visually.
Hmm.
You can describe them in terms of bodily awarenesses. That's kind of more the yoga thing at first, until you get into like visualizing and stuff. So as I then get into like meditation sits, I'm doing the yoga thing, and it's very compatible, it's very comfortable. You've already put work into this. The full awareness is on the breath process, the breath coming in, the breath coming out, and that is all that's going on. That's who you are, is the breath coming in, the breath going out, and how that breath affects the other things that you feel. So this is a little ecology that you're now being in this kind of bridge state, like sort of hypnagogic, like early meditator state. So the experience of the gross state that we're in right now, you're aware of your body, you're thinking a story, you're paying attention to your environment, and you're reacting to it. And this is one way to run a human brain system in the upper right. Or this is one way to be a person. We relax out of the story, we relax out of the body reaction, and now it's like, what are we? We're this hum, and we're sound and visual, and we're sensation. And it's not good or bad, it's not doing anything, there's no time Okay, we're starting to get timeless. That it's like,
Hmm.
because in this moment, I don't have to react to anything and I don't need to do anything. So I can just float. I can just literally be. So as you do that, it just seems like as a practice, maybe nothing will happen. We don't know how the science of this shit works. But if you do it, usually something does happen and you go into a deeper place than that. You
Like the use of the isolation chambers, the
That's
ultra
one. Yeah.
salinity water, sound, light, sensory deprivation chamber is like a kickstart to your meta.
Yep, yeah, it's those are like from the outside in, like the environment is taking away your
Take away
need
all
for body
environment.
awareness.
Yeah.
You're literally floating, not just like figuratively floating in the manifest, but now you're like
Hmm.
floating in a tank of water with nothing happening. Yeah, that's you're trying to kind of do that in whatever situation you're in. Even if someone's like jiggling their keys or there's like a dog barking or
Right.
bringing that practice into your daily life. And there's a temptation to go off in a lot of directions with all that, but only to say yoga started me doing states. I was doing dream work and yoga, and that was mainly my expression of states. It didn't really enter into my waking life at first. And it was just in my waking life, it was just sort of a schedule. It's like you have to do this every day, you have to do this every day. But over time, it started to transform into something that I kind of had to do, or like you'd miss it if it wasn't there. When it becomes a habit, it's like, oh shit, I need to do that. When you don't meditate, it's like, why would I meditate? What a waste of time. Or maybe not that harsh, but just like it's hard to make time for it because it doesn't seem like something you need or something that like is
The
of as
human
immediate value.
brain craves structure and routine. That's what it likes to do. It does also like to problem solve, but I mean, the sun comes up, the sun goes down. Are you waking up at sun up and going to sleep when sun goes down? You should. You'd be a
Yeah.
happier person because the brain loves that sort of shit. If you have whatever job you have and you're working very similar hours every day, you notice that your sleep rhythm, whether your
Oh
alarm
yeah.
goes off or not, you're waking up at the same time. Your brain wants that.
Yeah.
Yeah, forcing a habit like yoga into your life and then sticking to it, your brain will start to crave the endorphins released by satisfying the it's time to do that.
About 45 days makes a habit. Yeah.
Hmm.
So it's tolerating for 40 days or so. I
Yeah.
mean, definitely, it's forcing, and then it's like, wait, this is the thing I do. I like this. My brain wants this. It's neat, and yeah, once you kind of get going, it's easy to sustain, but it's hard to start. It's pretty hard to start. So
So
oftentimes,
I just finished Atomic Habits book, and it talks a lot about this. I won't talk super deep into it, but the way to start is very small reward. So if your effort is to get into the routine of yoga and you just can't seem to do it, measure success as putting out your yoga mat.
yeah,
The other thing that he recommends is put a time limit. You're only going to do yoga for 3 minutes.
100%.
That's it
Hmm.
for however long you want to set. And after a
Yeah.
while, you're like, man, I kind of want to do this longer. Nope.
Okay, that
Until
one's
you get to the breaking point of, well, I'm just going to do it longer. And then once that happens, once that breaking point, once that tipping point where I'm just going to do it longer, it's a habit now. Just starting is difficult, but if you start with small measures of success, it's a lot easier to maintain that routine and make it a habit.
1,000% in line with that. Basically the same thing. The Wilbur advice there is like, yeah, instead of insisting on an hour a day, which is what you really want, or whatever,
Hmm.
2 hours a day, and
Boy,
then
that's a
okay, you
lot.
actually do it once a week, right?
Yeah, there's no
Instead of that,
reward.
you have to do 2 minutes a day,
Hmm.
every single day, no matter what, or you're dead.
That's it. Oh yeah,
Like, try and tell me you can't make 2 minutes for this shit.
right.
And so, but in the way I do it, I have not gotten to the point of having the restraint to actually stop after that 2 minutes. That's my problem. I'll
That's the
keep going.
thing is, yeah,
You
if
actually
you're,
want to do it for
it's
a
almost a
half hour.
punishment for not doing it, but
Yeah.
you have to stick with that
Okay.
time frame.
I'm gonna try that though. I'm gonna definitely try that. I have to stop it. Yeah, because that's such a good. It's so good.
You'll start to yearn to go on, and then once you allow yourself, you and put a time limit on it. Like I'm only going to do 2 minutes for 10 days, or you can't say 2 minutes forever. Put a limit on it. By the time your
Oh, I
limit
like
comes
that.
around, you'll probably want to keep going anyway. Like at that point, it's like a burden to not keep going.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's amazing. I'll do that. I'm going to apply that. I think the cutoff is really important and the time and the days, like how long you're going to do it. Because
Yeah,
if it's
and that has to
forever,
be preset.
like,
You can't just wing it. You have to know how long you're going to do it a day and how many days you're going to allow that bullshit to go on before you succumb to whatever your goal is. And maybe it's steps. If I'm only going to do it for 2 minutes a day for 10 days, and then okay, your 10-day mark hits, and then at 5 minutes you're like, well, that's kind of enough. Problem. Reset, reevaluate, and then 5 minutes is your shut off for the next 10 days to get to whatever your goal is. If it's an hour or 2 hours or completion of a task or whatever it may be,
goals are good.
as
Yeah,
soon as
milestones.
something feels a chore, laborious, mandatory, no reward, it won't, the habit forming stops in your mind. You're not recreating that path. It's as soon as any resistance come, it's very easy to just put it down and not pick it up again. Like going to
Yes. Yeah.
like going to the gymnasium. And we're human beings.
Yes.
So if you do, this is another thing, not mine, Atomic Habits, great book. If you do fail, we're humans. People fail. If you miss a day, no big, well, not a huge deal. It happens. Get back on it. If you miss two, now you're in trouble. If you miss one, hell or high water, don't miss the second one. If you miss session 2 and session 8, that's something. But if you miss session 2 and session 3, it's over with. Start over.
Yeah, you didn't make it.
Nope.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so lots of directions to go with meditation practices, habit forming, and yoga, body mind awareness. But only to start talking the psychic state from the gross state. It
Mm-hmm.
appears as like a letting go, an abandoning, a floating, distancing, standing apart from what, right? The physical
Hey, Adam.
pinching. Mhm.
From what?
Physical pinching, physical bodily muscular pinching of yourself into reality, facial fear of being seen and pinching of that. Okay, that's bodily awareness, that's yoga stuff. Feeling your internal organs, feel not as the way you're imagining them visually or because you know anatomy, but just like what does the stuff inside your body feel like right now? Can
Mm-hmm.
you feel it? People don't really know
Mm-hmm.
whether they can or can't. We just not really think we do. The body is this sort of gateway. The body is this weird gateway because, we have our five senses, they're bodily senses, and the senses are generating our field of reality. So the way to get into your operating system is through that body, through those senses. At what I'm going into, physical sensation, allowing the feelings to be what they are, paying close attention to them. This is kind of your entry point into psychic, and you have to focus more because what's fighting against that is the things that you normally do. Your
Mm-hmm.
deficiencies, the pressures on you, your goals, the things that have happened to you, the people that you feel good and bad about, the movies that you want to see, the story, the narrative story, the ego, and the
And
personality.
that defeatism becomes a habit as well.
Oh
The
yeah.
reward of being defeated is you don't have to try anymore. And that's a crisp, juicy reward is I can give up and blame something else. So that
Oh
becomes a
golly.
habit too.
So we had introduced my like four selves mini model of levels. It's the same thing as spiral dynamics, just saying like magenta, red, amber, you're essentially a personality reacting to things in the present moment.
Mm-hmm.
Upper amber, orange, green, you're an ego. You're standing apart from personality, puppeting it around. You're still being personalities, but you're kind of seeing yourself as being this logical process that governs the things I do, that has goals. It's a story that lasts the length of my life. It's a story about the relationships that I have and the things that I'm trying to accomplish. So that's ego. And that's kind of the where you live in amber, orange, upper amber, orange, green. And then as you get into teal, of course, you're still ego and personality, but now we're getting into this thing where you're more becoming aware of the invisible things that motivate you, the invisible things you're doing, subconscious things. Those are becoming more visible to you from ego. And as you get into psychic and subtle, you're identifying yourself as that more. So yourself is just like ego stands apart from personality. The psyche stands apart from ego, and it's just floating. It's floating in colors and sound and body and sensation, and it's seeing the ego doing its thing. So it's not beating the ego. It's not destroying or crushing the ego any more than the ego is crushing or destroying the little sub-personalities it pulls out all the time. It does not kill the ego. It's like you're just not the ego. You're standing apart from it, looking at it. And the body is a gateway to it. Meditation practices in terms of behavioral stuff are a gateway to it. There's lots of gateways to it, but these are sort of our recommended approach for going that way. So now, getting into stuff that people aren't already doing all the time and are familiar with, there is a going through the body. If I'm in Zen, just basic Zen is kind of what I did for a super long time. Just pay attention, don't fall asleep, pay attention, be here, pay attention. Zen's really easy.
Could you define it a little differently? Like, I don't understand.
So Zen came out of, it's sort of a fusion of Taoism and Buddhism. So it has that meditation practice element, but it doesn't like to clutter things up with models and maps and terminology. So they keep it real simple. It's just like in Zen, you doesn't matter what you do, but if you want to do this thing, you pay very close attention and you study riddles that have no answer so that to exhaust your brain out of trying to finish the story. Finish the fucking story, man. Basic Zen. And so I chose Zen because it is an intense meditation practice, but it's very simple. I'm a Westerner. I don't speak the languages this is originally written in. I don't come from those cultures, so I need it dumbed down for my baby-ass Western brain. Luckily, it's very, very simple. This duality, we're on one side of the duality trying to come into the other and balance them out. So I think that what people aren't familiar with, what they don't really do in our culture and in most cultures and in most people, is you go through the body and you're still here, alert and awake and present, but you actually can get out of the thought process. There just isn't this talking thing in your brain telling you what's happening. There's no broadcaster anymore, and there's just data coming in. You're interpreting it. You're interpreting it into some sort of semblance of meaning, but it isn't being forced, railroaded into the ego story, the story of this one individual, and everything that happens relates to this thing that I know. It's just a thing that happens, a thing that happens, a thing that I know, a thing that happens. They're connected. Cool. Just see it, float through it. And we tend to assume this rigidity or this concreteness to the way that we manifest reality. Like that thing, I flick it. I knew it was there. It didn't move. It made a sound. Everything I expected would happen. But that's because my configuration right now is running this thing that pulls everything taut so that it works conceptually the way that I want it to. I'm making reality conceptually work the way that I want it to. I'm forcing it to be certain things. And as we relax that, this infinity of everything spills out. Like, sure, that's always gonna happen. It's always gonna make a sound when I reach forward and flick something. But the construction of it, the shape of it, all that stuff doesn't need to be happening. So I could be sitting here in the exact same reality with the exact same hardware, experiencing it in this completely different way, experiencing reality as a psyche, as opposed to experiencing it as a narrative ego story, and also as opposed to experiencing it as this present moment personality role-playing thing. In day-to-day dealings, in everything that humans are trying to do, there's this sort of personality ego process. We're trying to outgrow personality, get really good at doing personalities, but definitely be an ego, standing apart from it, and be a good ego. That's our story, the narrative story of people. And we just don't even have these other two levels, psyche and consciousness. So there's so much to unpack just in the transition from personality to ego. That's where we spend most of our time. If you conquer ego, all of your earthly goals are pretty much achieved. Not by making it to the top all the time, but by acceptance of what you can do and then accomplishing what you can do. That makes a person very happy in the narrative story of ego. But all that stuff is just these two halves of the entire level system. So it's the things you can do at personality and ego stages. because we don't offer ourselves these higher stages of psyche and consciousness. That is sort of like to talk about how states start happening. And then I think that what people might find interesting is kind of like what effect that has on the ego, on the sense of the story and how it feels to be the self. As you enter psychic and subtle states, I would say that the effect on the ego and your normal waking gross consciousness is everything, literally everything that I had like insecurity or anxiety about, I just didn't anymore. Like it existed, but it wasn't me anymore. It's like I could see, okay, here comes a stressor. There's the stress. There it is. But it didn't like hit me. It wasn't like in my home. So if I'm meditating regularly, I don't experience stress and anxiety. I just don't. Like when I'm not, I know those words. They mean something to me. I get it. Like, oh God, it's so stressful, you know. But with regular meditation, it's just not a thing that's in the me. It's like the me is like watching it happen, and pretty much can like say, okay, no, I don't want that in my reality right now. Now, what effect does that have? Good effects for psyche. Who knows good effects for ego? These are things that you have to like integrate. You know, we're not trying to kill ego. We're trying to make ego work.
Give me some sort of an example of a stressor that would happen, and then your real-time processing of it as you watch it go by.
So let's say like my alarm didn't go off and I'm like I wake up late for something. So not
Okay.
only am I like waking up with all my physical issues and all that, but like already thing is over, I missed it. So the normal kind of gross waking beta brainwave self is immediately feeling attacked by that. Just like, oh fuck, I'm such an idiot. Oh my God, what am I gonna do? Like what's next? Like what's the first thing I do? How do I oh man, I'm so embarrassed. Like how am I gonna explain this? Like and
What am
I
I going to
think
tell my dad? Yeah, go
yeah,
on.
psyche like I wake up, I am late. Okay, let's talk to the person I'm late with. Like let's get that right now.
hmm
Hello, hi. Oh geez, I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm late. Are we? And it's not. None of that is stressful. It's just moving. It's just like
Next
okay,
step, next
this
step, next
generates a
step.
move.
Not
But
100 steps that it becomes overwhelming. Is
what's
that
absent from
sort
that
of
is
the
this
thing?
little talking voice that's telling me,
Oh, you're
that's
terrible. You
punishing
slept
me.
in. Oh, you're going to
It's
get in so much
punishing me.
trouble. Yeah.
I'm being mean to me. Like I already fucked up. Now I'm gonna give myself a hard time too. And so, I mean, it might kind of sound to someone like listening, you know, okay, so that means like as you develop into a higher level, you're always late for shit and you don't need to make excuses, you know. No, no, not like
In a
that.
very lizard brain tier 0 thing, I was like, oh, classic Adam. He's late for something.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And so this psyche thing, it's not resisting classic Adam. It's not saying like,
hmm
I'm not late for everything. It's like, oh shit, classic Adam might be late for everything. I might be a guy who's
Maybe.
late for everything. Okay.
You're not. In my experience, you're not. But I
No,
mean,
no. But you
yeah,
gotta start
you pick the parameters.
as the thing happens, you know, you're like, I am an asshole. Like it's not a thing to fight against or a thing to fix or repair or reward or punish. It's a thing. And it might be wrong. Could very well be wrong. So what I'm gonna do in the present moment, always, forever, is you see the thing, you do the motion that complements the thing. You react in the way that you ought to. You know, from the level of psyche, that's a very intuitive thing. From the level of ego, it's a very answer the question, force it brain kind of thing. You know,
hmm
from the level of personality, it's emotional reaction. It's heroes and villains. It's either you're with us or you're against us kind of
hmm
thing. That's personality. Yeah. Another thing with the meditation practice is there's a fear of it being boring. You know, like I need to listen to stuff when I'm in a silent room. Otherwise, I
Okay.
just kind of get bored or whatever. So
Yeah.
the
Sure.
idea that I'm going to sit in a dimly lit room on the floor doing nothing sounds really boring.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're in that wired up thing where you need stimulation, it is boring. But that settles down. And now the details of this boring thing come out. And actually, the situation of now with all of its blandness and drabness and incompleteness is like the perfect portrait of reality. It's exactly what reality is, and you wouldn't want it to be anything different. It's perfect. It's God looking back at you. God is everything except you. Your goal is to be in love with it. That's my narrative. That's the
Okay.
narrative story that I tell myself, right? And so there's this embracing of silence and nothingness, no visuals, just the feeling of my body, just the breath coming in and out, laying on the beach, watching ocean waves crash. There's no point to it. It just happens over and over again. The breath just comes in, out. That's the spirit of the universe from my perspective, from the perspective of an organic human being trapped inside of a brain. It's just this breath, and it's fascinating. It's not boring at all, because your brain is so good at making things not boring. When
Filling in the gaps. Yeah.
Yeah, when it's super boring, and this is why the word subtle comes into play. Subtle is kind of like things you wouldn't really notice. All the things you wouldn't notice are flooding you. They're bombarding you. So sitting there doing nothing silently for an hour is, it not always, but it gets to this fascinating place. The field that is generated by your sensations and by your awareness of sensations is just this beautiful symphony that's always happening. And that's the bliss. That's what's pleasant. That's why they're smiling. Because the actual feeling of being is nice. The actual way that the universe looks from your perspective right now is beautiful. It's very cool. So in that place, as a psyche, just having the experience of watching this character play out its story, it's just a great story. It's just a beautiful story, even when you go through hard shit. Like, of course you wanted to go through that hard shit. You didn't want an easy life. Like, what? You didn't play Doom on easy mode, you wuss. Come on. So we want the challenge. Of course, like, that's what we're here for. That's the nature of this game. Apart from it, it feels more like that. You wouldn't want to read a story where nothing bad happens. You know, you wouldn't want your hero to not be challenged, not go through any hardship. But when you're making your hero get beat up and humiliated, that's, I don't want to do that. I'm the father of this fictional character. I don't want to put him through hard stuff. But that's the story. That's how you make story. That's what's a good story. That's what's going to make people like the hero. That's what's going to make the hero feel like they've accomplished something. Is if they had to play that story character, and if that story character went through a lot of shit. The more shit that racks up, that it starts to become like an abstraction thing. Like you're saying, like, you care about everything, you care about nothing. It's just kind of this thing that's happening more and more. It's not so direct and visceral. The way that you watch a movie as an adult versus as a kid, that's the difference. Is for a kid, it's very immediate and visceral, and they have no problem putting themselves in the shoes of the main character and playing that story. But us, we start taking all these other perspectives on it. I want to be all the characters. I want to be the writer and the director and the audience, all critiquing one another. And the experience becomes less of an adventure. It becomes like more of like a task. Not a good or bad task, just a task, just something you're occupying your time with. I watch this movie and I gather the data of it and I try to assemble it into something. It's like a very upper egoic way to watch a movie. Because that's what adults are, you know, they're upper egos on a good day.
So you touched on the path you took and the triggers you used to get into this observer type state of your story happening, regardless of your own influence. Things happen, and then that's what happened. The thing that one of the things you said that caught me, and I was like, was that you're in love with everything. Can you get into that a little bit more? Can you expand on that?
This is an intuitive psyche thing that I'm trying to get my ego to believe.
Okay.
It's like a way to tell the story of yourself. And from the perspective of Adam, I should embrace this idea as much as I can, according to myself, my psyche, that everything that isn't me, everything that I'm not doing is God. God is that other to me. And you can say, like, yes, I'm also God, whatever. God doesn't mean anything. You can say whatever you want.
This is just
God.
Vocabulary discrepancy. Yeah.
Yeah. So everything but me is God. So what is God? It's everything.
Everything except everything but you is everything.
And and that's all I'm saying. Yeah, it is what it is, right? And when I say God, it makes it sound like a personality. An unfortunate thing. But
And when you
I'm
said,
just
so the thing that caught me again was vocabulary. It's speaking the same language. Love is love's dangerous, man.
ah. So romantically in love with everything that isn't you.
Well, yeah, no, not even romantically. Just like, oh, I love chocolate ice cream or whatever.
Sure, or as a
So
preference.
what if that
Yeah.
chocolate ice cream was taken away? Well, that's going to have hardship because love is an emotion. So I think I understand now. It was a
Um,
vocabulary thing. It's not God
yeah.
and love. It's everything and acceptance.
In Christianity and in yoga, the word devotion comes up a lot. And I think this is what I
Mm.
mean by
Oh.
romantically,
Hmm.
is that your romantic relationship is one of the most deep and intimate and important to your story relationships. One of them. And you go to places with that person that you don't normally go. So we have this mode called like loving that we do that is the biggest share that we have.
Hmm.
And so the idea is more and more have that attitude toward all of reality, towards the universe itself, to be
Hmm.
in love with it, which means a lot of times you give it the benefit of the doubt. You trust it. You give it gifts. It's not always
Like
I get
human
what I want out of
sacrifice.
this relationship. In terms of effort, in terms
Yeah.
of, yeah, like there's a lot of sacrifice in relationships, a good kind. I
Hmm.
wasted my time writing this card for you. Here you go. Oh, you wasted your time
I think,
for
yeah, I
me.
think you put that in one of my birthday cards one year.
Yeah. I hope you're grateful I wasted my time on this bullshit.
Yeah, the 50-cent card and the 70-cent stamp and my time. You're welcome.
Because as I understand, this is your fucking love language, you piece
Yeah.
of shit. Mine are words of praise, you piece of
Yeah.
shit. Yeah.
Affirmation.
Yeah, yeah. Oh golly. What the fuck
We
was
got
my point there?
we got
Yeah.
less than a minute.
Oh yeah, being romantically in love with. So that's kind of a way of articulating a subtle sentiment from the gross realm, from ego, because it is words, it's language, it's concepts.